Just letting everyone know that this is being recorded. If in the event that you do not wish to be recorded, please leave at this time. My name is George Brooks. I'm the Technical Director of BDPA Chicago. I would like to welcome everyone to our February Black History Month meeting. At this time, I would like to introduce our president, John Coleman. Take it away, John.
Well, welcome and thank you each for taking time from your evening to spend with us. BDPA is a great organization that has been around for more than 40 years. And one of the great things about this organization is that we start from the very earliest and we follow you for your career. Our tagline is from classroom to boardroom, and those are not idle words with us. We actually start with young individuals in the sixth and seventh grade, start teaching them coding and offering them scholarship opportunities. They can continue to earn scholarship opportunities all the way up to the final year in high school. Um, that's just two of our programs. We have the YTC, which is the youth technology camps, and we have the high school computer competitions. Those are our most well-known products, but we also help those who are in their undergrad start to do graduate level research in our IT showcases. Um, in our early career, we have lots of monthly programs where we have topics such as the one we're going to have this evening, but we also have programs in past on other cybersecurity programs. We've had programs on Salesforce. We have programs on just all kinds of technical topics. Um, when you get to your middle of your career, we offer CIO receptions and opportunities to mingle with the boardroom because we are classroom to boardroom. Once you're with this organization, you can stay in this organization and continue to grow it throughout your career. And you get back out of this organization as much as you're willing to put in. Never be frightened to ask a question because our members are very much willing to give back. You can go into every state in this country, every major city, and you will find a BDPA person. Um, so what does all of that cost? A very small amount. If you're in your career, we simply ask for $100 a year for membership. If you're a student, membership is as low as $25, but we don't want to discourage students from being involved. So we do have some corporate partners. So don't let money be the thing that stops you from being part of this organization. We also have such products as our SIGs, our special interest groups. We have a longstanding SIG that does Cisco, cybersecurity, virtualization that runs twice a month on I believe it's
Sundays.
Sundays. And prior to the pandemic, they actually had a physical space in the West Loop. Now that we're in pandemic, they've actually virtualized those. And then we actually are starting to work with some additional products for the youth. We are working with a robotics group. We're working with a VR group. We're working with several esports opportunities. And some of those actually have stipends connected to them. So for that little bit of money, you open yourself, there's the key to opportunity. And that's kind of what I had to say about BDPA tonight. I'm going to turn it back over to George to run the rest of
Thank you very much, John. And at this time, I'm going to introduce our MC for the evening, Mr. Reggie Rush. Go ahead, take it away, Reggie.
Thank you so much. Number one, it's always an honor that you guys invite me to work with the team and get involved. I think I still have BDPA in my blood, so that's a part of it. But one of the things that I'd like to add on to what John said regarding BDPA, and this kind of goes in line with what Eric had said, it's one of the places where you can go into a lot of the major cities. We've got about 30 plus chapters across the US, but you can go in a lot of major cities and you could connect with BDPA and you can see people that look like you. And that's a great feeling. I think the other thing is I get amazed. I used to get amazed when I was president of Chicago chapter, and some of the parents that had their children in our programs would talk about how we saved her son's life, or how his GPA has increased, and the number of things that the students do. And I remember one incident where we had a sponsor over at Abbott and a young lady, a young woman that was with Abbott, who was our executive sponsor there. She had met a young man a couple of years before. And when she came back out to an event and she met him again, she broke down in tears. And she broke down in tears because this young man, in a couple of years, he just changed. You know, he walked up to her, he greeted her, looked her in her eyes, shook her hand, you know, just the way he spoke to her, interacted with her. And so when I look at this organization as a whole, I can say that I've seen it change people's lives. And I think that tonight, when we have the conversation with Michael Echols, that we're really honored to have such an esteemed speaker tonight. I think he's going to share some of those things because I think that we're on the brink of an opportunity because technology is one of the fastest growing segments that we have right now in opportunities. Cybersecurity space is also fast growing, and I know Michael's going to talk about that. I had the pleasure, he and I talked about that a little bit, and I think he's got some things he'll enlighten us with. But this is a huge opportunity for people of color to move into a space that can bring them earnings beyond their belief. So with that, I'd like to take a few minutes and introduce Michael A. Echols. He's a board member of IACI. He's also the CEO of Max Cybersecurity LLC. Now, I'm going to get into the rest of his bio, but I think what we're going to do is we're going to bite a little bit off of it and have him talk about his career. And so what I'm going to ask him to do is, if he'd like to say anything before he gets started, and just tell us, you know, things like, how did you first get interested in technology? If we can start there. Michael?
Sure. I actually had the opportunity. First of all, I'm from Birmingham, Alabama, and grew up in Wilmington, Delaware. And in Birmingham, Alabama, we were dirt poor, right? Dirt poor. And my father went to Wilmington, Delaware to visit a uncle, and my parents were professional people, but lower level. And I had the opportunity to get a scholarship and go to a high school that with rich people, people who own, who built the Superdome, people who own God knows whatever else. And in that environment, I realized that these guys aren't any better than me. I was the best athlete. They wanted to be, I realized that they wanted to be me, right? Mm-hmm. And we had our first computer in the school. And there were some tech geeks we were in there doing a little coding and just kind of making the bell ring and doing things like that. And that was my first opportunity to see this thing actually existed. I mean, prior to that, I can't even remember even thinking about it, right? Which is one of the sort of premises that I have about moving Black people forward, right? It's access. I was on a Homeland Security. I used to work at Homeland Security. I was talking diversity on a Homeland Security annual conference. And that's the one thing that I stressed was access. You can't move forward if you don't even know something exists.
Yep. Yeah, the line I think I always use was a child can't be what a child can't see. That's right. So thank you. And so thanks for the segue. I mean, I know you spent 10 years in infrastructure and leadership at Homeland Security. You know, how was that? How exciting is a role like that?
Well, let me give you the real truth, and I'm open book too, so we can have a real conversation here, right?
That's what I love about you, Michael.
To be here with you guys, we can have a real conversation. So I actually went into the federal government with TSA in an organization right after 9/11 that was designated to protect transit from terrorism. So that was CBNRE, chemical, biological, nuclear, radiological, explosive, and cyber. And so in doing that, one of the issues with 9/11 was the firefighters couldn't communicate with the police, that sort of thing. You guys remember that? So this was before smartphones. So I came up with an idea. I put together the HP PDAs with some software with the access points that were on buildings in Houston for the 2004 Super Bowl, and created a smartphone of sorts. So now all of a sudden, all the police officers that were there amongst 700,000 people that were there for the Super Bowl, partying and doing whatever else, could now see each other on these devices. They could share video, they could do all, believe it or not, they couldn't do that before this. Right?
Wow.
Went back to TSA, a couple of people took credit. It did not progress my career at all. All it did was piss me off though. So 2005, the Homeland Security Institute had just started, think tank for DHS, went there, did some things. And then I had the opportunity to go work for Booz Allen and to help build a national infrastructure protection plan. If you don't know, there's 16 critical sectors, IT, comms, water, nuclear. These are all sectors that if something happened in that sector, it would have a debilitating effect on the nation. So there's critical sectors, and in each of these critical sectors, government works with industry to build risk programs. So I helped build that, helped do the national response framework. That's how all the agencies and everybody responds together to any kind of disaster in the country. And in doing these things, I was also back in school. I got a master's in biotechnology. I got a technology degree. I got MBA. So racism costs. I'll tell anybody anytime, racism costs, right? And so, you know, I went and did all these things. And so whereas I was a backbencher before, in 2009, all of a sudden, I became a leader at an organization called National Communication Systems, whose goal was to assure that decision makers could always communicate. That's underwater sea cables, that's satellites, that's seen and unseen networks. And I took that opportunity and used my entrepreneurism and I ran with it. Before long, I was the chair of the communication sector. I was the rep to NATO in Brussels. I was leading a communication sector risk assessment that they said could not be done because you would have to, because we work with industry, and industry, AT&T, Verizon, Sprint, you name it, they're not going to tell you what their vulnerabilities are because they're afraid that they might get regulated on. So I was able to get them to trust me. And when I say trust me, meaning that I convinced them that regulation takes so long and is so expensive to the government that if we could come up with these issues across wireline, wireless, cable, broadband, and satellite, and then begin to fix them together, we would be good. There would be no regulation. On top of that, we got the customers who were the White House, OSTP, and the FCC to be a part of the working group.
Wow.
So just by using what I call ghetto engineering, right? These things that we've been
I
talking
love that
about our
term.
whole lives, I was able to outsmart the fox. And then, you know, as time went on, I had some other opportunities, but that's how.
Let me ask you a question here. Let me back up because I heard you talk about your education. So I want to, you know, I love the fact that you're just down to earth, and we want to be real here. So let's talk about the challenges you had. You're this Black individual, male.
Mhm.
You've got degrees up the yin yang, so very intelligent. Entrepreneurial spirit, which is, you know, very creative and very ideal driven. What kind of roadblocks and racism did you run into, and how did you deal with that?
Oh, it was beautiful. It was one of those situations where in 2004, when I did the stuff for TSA, then they said I didn't have the degrees that I needed, right? So every time something occurred, there was always another thing that I didn't have. Something very interesting became apparent to me though. As I started to move through my career and I was the manager or director, and I could see half of these people didn't have degrees. Half of these people that they were putting in positions who happened to be Caucasian, did not have a degree, and they're a friend of someone's or they went to church with that person.
Wow.
But let me reverse it on you. Let's talk about the Black people. I would be at the White House, all white people. I'm walking down the hall, you see another Black person, it looks like they're looking away to not have to speak to you.
Really?
Oh, it's amazing. Or you'd see somebody and it almost seemed like they were upset because they're not the only Black person in the room.
Right. This Black guy's walking around. So, it's funny that you brought that up. I really call it the field nigga, house nigga kind of thing that we are still stuck on. I experienced something similar to that when I was in corporate America and went to corporate headquarters, and the brother just didn't talk to me at all. And I don't understand that, but that's prevalent. It's been prevalent in your whole career, or have you seen that start to dissipate?
It has. It stopped being prevalent when in 2015 I was put in charge of building a new way for us to share cyber threat information, which is the cheapest way to reduce cyber risk, right? Is if this company shares with that company, and whatever happened to company A shouldn't happen to company B, right? Because they had foreknowledge, cyber threat information sharing. So I was in charge of developing a new approach to that called Information Sharing and Analysis Organizations, ISAOs. And so I did that in 2015, but a funny thing, they gave me this project to do in conjunction with the White House. And at that time, we didn't have a national budget. Well, we didn't have a national budget. That means you can't do new starts. That means I couldn't start up the standards organization that I was charged to stand up. Guess what? I got my team together and I said, we're going to go hard regardless of the walls that you see in front of you. And again, from the training that we've had all of our lives, right? So
that's ghetto engineering, right?
Ghetto engineering. So I went hard, and guess what? A most amazing thing occurred. There was a 3-week period that opened up where there was a federal budget. It was the most amazing thing. And it all worked out the way it was supposed to. But had we not pushed forward, we would have looked like we failed. And that's probably the story of most people, is we see that roadblock ahead of us and we go, it ain't gonna work out anyway. Why should I put the energy in?
So it sounds like, and I think that Eric alluded to this when we were just talking as everybody joined, but it sounds like that you were often the only Black man in the room. Would that be true?
Except all the people that work for me. I had about 40 people that worked for me. A lot of them were minorities.
Awesome.
And at one point, I had a corner office, Homeland Security, I had a corner office, and there were a lot of cubes out, right? At one point, one of my friends, a white guy, walks in and says, Mike, you better hire some white people sooner. They're gonna say something. He was joking, good friend of mine, right? I took him out into the hall and I looked and I said, hey, everybody. And people started standing up, right? I said, did anybody say anything when they hired all of them?
That's right.
All the white people. And he said, man, I apologize. He said, I never even thought about it like that. I said, yeah.
It's so funny you said that.
When there were Black people here. Yeah. You didn't notice when they were all white people.
Yeah. I had a manager say that to me when I was hiring a number of Black people. And he said, man, Reggie, same thing. You're hiring a lot of Black people lately. And I looked around and said, well, you've hired a lot of white people before me. So I figured, we'll just keep it pace. But, I think I heard a couple of things that you said, that one of the things I think we all could really take forward. And I want to say that is 2 words, right? Courage and determination. You talked about what we have to continue to push forward, even sometimes when we don't have, all the resources that we need, and the courage you had to do that, the courage you had to take your ideas forward, even when you were meeting a lot of resistance. Can you talk about those two aspects in life and how important they've been, the courage and the determination in your whole career and in your life? Can you elaborate on that?
So having been knocked down a lot of times is the best thing that could have happened to me. So anybody that's feeling like, man, I just can't seem to get ahead. Well, that's a part of your preparation, right? And so for me, my big break came, I had a boss at National Communication Systems, and I would take my papers into this guy and they would come out and the paper was so red, you couldn't read what was on it. This guy made me good, but I recognized that he was making me good, right? I recognized that he was creating excellence, whether he knew it or not. At one point, we're at the White House and he had cancer. And because he had cancer, he didn't want to take off work because he was afraid he would lose his job. So he would still come to work, even though he was on medicines and stuff. So we were at the White House and he's supposed to brief. And it was something that he hadn't prepared for. And I was prepared. He goes, Michael, brief you. And that was my opportunity. And after I hit a home run, you couldn't tell me anything after that. And so that preparation and that understanding that once you get over that hump and you get that confidence that you're going to be good. And the same issues that people have with you are the same issues that a lot of people have with themselves. Fear. They treat you like that because they're scared of you, but you act like that because you're scared. And if you recognize it, then you can get over it. I can't tell you how many times I used to get up to have to give a speech and there's 1,000 people in a room and none of them look like me. And the butterfly is so bad, I couldn't barely speak. But I would tell myself, that's just fear. You got to be able to talk to yourself, right?
Right.
Man.
I think if you talk to many successful people, I think that you'll hear a phrase I like to share with, people that I'm talking with and students is you have to learn how to do it afraid.
That's right.
Because like you said, you'll get through that fear and you'll realize the confidence that you really have when you get out there like that. Yeah.
And
George, how are we taking questions? Let me pause here a second. How are we taking questions in the chat or?
Yes, if we could go ahead and place any questions that we have in the chat, and then we'll direct you to actually unmute or we'll read them aloud. So if you could place any questions you have in the chat, please. All right. Thank you, Reggie.
So Michael, I want to go back. I know you talked about walking down the hall, being a Black man, and some of the Black people wouldn't look at you. And I know that you actually had access to the White House when President Obama was there. Is that correct?
Correct.
Did it change during that period for you?
Something really funny was going on. Man, it's the most incredible thing. So up top, you saw the infrastructure he had around him, Eric Holder, and some of the other Black people in leadership positions. Within the agencies, there were no Blacks at the directors, assistant secretaries, and part of that was people would push up in their career to a certain level, and then they would run into the same resistance that I had. And they would say, I could leave government and go make 30% more than I'm making right now and not have to put up with this headache. And they did. And so that's what happened. So when they say we can't find qualified people, when they use those excuses, the part that they're not telling you is that they washed a lot of those people out.
Yeah.
Also, I used to bring young Black guys into my office and I would say to them, I know you're brilliant. You don't have to be the smartest guy in the room, because what would happen is they would sense that they were smarter than the other people in some of these meetings.
Mm,
They would get in there and show their tail.
mm,
And I explained to them, you're showing all your cards. And by doing that, they're going to shut you down so that you never reach the next level and you don't become competition.
mhm. So in one way, we have to kind of pace our intelligence when we're in meetings. We have to pace ourselves when we're part of teams, because again, you said it a little bit ago, when people have fear rise up in them, then that's when they seek to destroy and figure out ways to deter you or destroy you as well.
Yeah, you'll
So
get
that's
the opportunity. You'll
yeah.
get your opportunity.
Hmm. Another key learning point, another aha moment.
Mhm.
Do we have any questions out there, George?
Yes, we do actually have a question from John. John, if you want to go ahead and unmute and go ahead and ask your question directly, please.
Okay, so we're always trying to stay current with what current platforms are coming out, and everyone's talking about Clubhouse these days. Are there any communication channels on the Clubhouse platform that you would find valuable as a person of color technologist in the security sector?
So you got me, John, because I'm not familiar with Clubhouse. I've heard of it, but I have not touched it, reviewed it, anything else.
So John, could you share what you mean by Clubhouse?
So Clubhouse is a platform that's come online recently. Basically, think of it as a conversation happening between multiple individuals, and you are invited in to be a fly in the room. So people like Elon Musk and lots of technology heavy hitters have conversations between each other and talk about concepts or ideas or future technologies that are about to happen. And you are actually have a chance to sit at the table and listen and ask your questions.
Mm,
So
Sounds like a place we need to be.
John,
Sorry?
interesting thing there is no one's being manipulated, which is what's happening on the internet all day, every day,
mhm.
right? The people who are talking, there's not a privacy situation because they're well aware and they're profiting from it, right?
Mhm.
And if they have no channels back into you, you don't have a security situation.
Mm.
And it's that easy to reduce risk.
Well, if we'd like to start, I'd be willing, since I'm a recent joiner to the platform. If anyone would like an invitation, since you have to be invited in, reach out to me at president@chicagobdpa.org, and I will send you out an invitation, and then you can search the various conversations for yourself.
Fantastic.
Great,
Phenomenal.
John. Why don't you put that email address in chat so people
I
can
will do
grab
that.
it easy? Thank
I
you,
will
sir.
also be posting in chat for everyone a link to Chicago BDPA's YouTube channel. So if you found this conversation or finding this conversation interesting, you can also see this and other previous conversations that have been our monthly presentations for the last 2 years.
Great. So, Michael, I want to go back to the other part of Michael, who's published, who's an author, who the video you sent me was, man, I think I watched it like 10 times. Can you first talk about your book? Actually, you got two books, correct?
I have one book and then another book I was heavily quoted.
Okay. Could you talk about those and then talk about your video that you sent over to me as well?
So again, I talk about you guys, Chicago, the Blues Brothers, right? I'm on a mission. Well, I've always felt like I was on a mission, right? And when I came to North from Birmingham, and the opportunities that I've been afforded, clearly, some of my friends didn't get. Going to the rich school, I played football in college, and that afforded me some opportunities because people tend to be nice to you when you're an athlete. And then I had an internship at the Department of Justice. So with all the struggle, I still am clear that I had it better than most people, right? Mm-hmm. And so with that being the case, this mission that I'm on is based on the fact that I got to see on the other side of the wall at Homeland Security. My book is called Secure Cyber Life, The Government's Not Coming to Save You. one thing that is very clear is that 300 and something million people in this country, the professional business people don't understand what's being done to them. So you can imagine the other 200-300 million who have no clue what's going on, right? And so I would just say to you that this book was to help them understand that this world is becoming super digitized every day. Every day there's a new something becoming digitized, right? Cloud first. We're moving every system, including your identity, right? So if Social Security number was our identity, and we're now becoming online algorithms, what happens when that algorithm is corrupted? Is it like a futuristic movie? Where do you go? Right now, people who have cyber issues have no reprieve. There's nowhere to go. Who do you call? Local police? No. If you have a disaster in this country, FEMA shows up, right? FEMA shows up, they hand out checks. If you have a calamity, a parent dies and so forth, so on, there are different circumstances where you might get Social Security check, you might get Medicare, Medicaid, right? There are safety nets. There are no safety nets for cyber and digital corruption. None. Who do you think that's going to hurt first? Black and brown people.
Yeah.
Black and brown people. And so the book, by the time I get to the last chapter and explain all the details so that people understand that I know what I'm talking about, how the government works, how things work, I call it digital slavery. And I talk about how we could end up, as far-fetched as it sounds, in a state of digital slavery, where you really don't have any control of your own identity, who you are.
Yeah. I know this might sound a little crazy, but I some time ago I quit, signing up for all these clubs at different restaurants and stores, and I realized that this data collection at some point is going to be dangerous. So with your comment, what can we start doing to kind of, I know we can't stop it because it's already in place. We've already logged in and signed in and made purchases.
Excuse me for a second, Reggie, because we actually had a question from, if I'm not mistaken, that was Eric, right?
Okay.
Eric, if you want to go ahead and unmute and ask your question directly.
All right, cool. Not a problem. Where was my question? All right, it was for Michael. What characteristic about yourself as a Black man earned you the most respect in your career?
Wow, that's a great question.
That's an awesome question.
Let me tell you, I can tell you what it is because I just figured it out in the last year.
Wow.
Honesty. Honesty. When I sat down with you all, I said, I'm an open book. Let's have a real conversation. That's what I've been doing the whole time. Sitting down with people, giving them a way to get out of the corner that they might be in, and letting them know that I got vulnerabilities too. I do that with the kids. When I'm talking to kids, hey man, I was a knucklehead, man. I used to make all kind of mistakes. I still make mistakes, right? And so it's that honesty. Let me tell you where that honesty got me recently. A young lady that worked for me, and I used to beat my people down. We would sit in the meeting, I would sit at the head of the table, and with all due respect, they would say, oh, well, I have to go to the meeting this week. And I would go, why? What are we achieving from it? What's the outcome? How is that helping us grow? And so by doing that, this young lady's now a GS-15, highest you can go in the government. And she reached out to me to give me a contract because she said, I need you to bring that energy back in here and to do this work. And I thought that this young lady, I thought she was like, I hate this guy, right? She's sitting there telling me how I changed her life because I showed her that it was okay to be honest. Wow.
Wow.
Thank you.
James had a question, I think, too, as well, to ask Michael.
Good evening, everybody. Good evening, Michael.
Sure.
Your speech to us is very wonderful. So this is my question. I'm a Black man in corporate.
Mhm.
And like you, I've experienced my fair share of racism, prejudice, bigotry, the fear from white managers or supervisors when they see the smart Black person in the room. You come prepared, you come smarter, more certified, more credentialed, et cetera, et cetera. Your colleagues and peers, they see who you are and they engage in the subterfuge. So you have to kind of play these mental chess moves and mental Tetris to make sure that you are where you need to be and you kind of hold back your pieces, hold back your information. But all of that can be extremely draining and extremely burdensome on your psyche. So my question to you is, given that context, how have you managed to deal with the stress and the burden of being the smartest, sharpest, certified, educated, put together, polished, pristine, only Black person in a white space doing your job better than they could ever potentially do it, and having to deal with their fears, their insecurity, their prejudice, their whatever adjective, noun, verb you want to insert in, where you're still able to maintain your integrity, still able to maintain your mentality, your discipline, and your health. Because in 2021 and 2020, I mean, we all know mental health is a major crisis, a major issue, specifically within our community. And the nonsense and the drama that they bring to the table that we have to work around and work within. How have you managed to deal with that? And what are some tips and tricks that you can give to some of us that are either new to it or have been dealing with it, so we don't burn out and crash out?
Man, these are unbelievable questions. That's wow. That's a great question. Three things. Number one, let's get the facts. The facts are Harvard did a study and said that when you're under stress, you can't function. Your brain doesn't think. You don't work. Your machine is overloaded. Kind of like a car when it's short on oil, right? There is a problem when you're stressed, right? First thing is you got to recognize that. And then the second thing is I've never been afraid of hard work. So I always look back to every bad thing that happened to me, right? At some point I was working during the week, then on the weekends, I was working as a security guard on Saturday and Sunday, right? So I'm working 7 days a week, right? So that kind of stress, I look back at it now, it was preparation, right? And so when I was in a situation, which was almost all the time, where they were bringing the heat on me, I was willing to go home, work all weekend, be more prepared on Monday, and laugh. That's where I got my stress relief, when they were shocked that this pressure that they were putting on me, right? This extra work that they were putting on me, this waiting for me to fail, and I was excelling. So that's one of the issues that we have, is that we just try to maintain. No, there is an old adage about NASCAR that when you see all the smoke and a crash in front of you, the logical thing is to hit the brakes. That's how you get killed, right? You slow down, you go through the crash. What you're supposed to do is you hit the gas, right? And it will take you through. Right? And again, you can't be afraid of what's going to be on the other side of that smoke. You got to hit the gas. And those are the principles that I was living by.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that.
Yes,
And
thank you,
George, we had
Michael.
another question.
Yes, we have Charles, if you want to go ahead and unmute yourself and ask your question. Okay, Charles going once. Charles going twice.
Here I go. Sorry about that, everyone. Yeah.
All right.
First, thanks. You're dropping gems on us, and it's very appreciated. But I wanted to pick your brain over something you mentioned earlier, the creative solutions that you have to continuously come up with. What is your thought process in identifying those opportunities, and what's your thought process when you deliver on them?
Okay, so the first thing is, in order for you to hack something, you got to do the work and understand how it works.
Mhm.
That's where people fail, is they will come up with a goal and they will have the passion to work towards that goal, but they never stopped to deconstruct the thing. Let me give you an example. And this is of the book that hasn't been released yet. And this book is going to kill him, but I had to do this first so nobody wouldn't talk to me afterwards. When we talk about the killing of young Black men, right? And when we talk about how civil rights leaders would just get together and they would march and hold the person up in effigy, nobody ever stopped to think, well, how do police, how do they function? And one of the ways that they function is that they have to have insurance, right? So if they have to have insurance, that's a part of the way their system works. This is the way that a hacker deconstructs a system, right? To figure out how it works. And if you were to make it so that that police department lost its insurance, they couldn't be a police department anymore.
Mm.
And I know this is a kind of an abstract example, but it's a good one, because that's why you see after these shootings, you'll see the city of New York paid a fine today, or the city of St. Louis paid a fine. Their insurance company didn't pay it, the city paid it with your money. So the point is that if you understand how things work, you can better target how to hack it, which more quickly helps you reach your goal.
Mhm.
Okay.
You can be
Okay.
spinning
Answer
your
your
wheels.
question.
You can be spinning your wheels and not even realize it.
Mhm. So one of the other comments, you mentioned honesty, and we had a comment in the chat that I thought was very apropos, which was the other thing, Michael, is you're very approachable, and so let's talk about that, because I think in listening to some of the things you said, I think sometimes, because my thing is to never let them see you sweat. I don't want them to know if I'm mad or if I'm happy, if I'm sitting in a meeting and they're coming at me. I mean, we've all been there, but having that approachability kind of a demeanor, how do you feel about that? And has that helped you in your career?
I think it has, but early on, I didn't realize that. Let me explain to you that.
Okay.
Uh, Again, I'm around white guys all the time, right? Because at my
Right.
level, there were no other Black guys, right? And so a couple good friends, one of them said to me one day, man, you're a big Black guy. And I'm 6'3", but I don't consider myself a big guy, right? Big Black guy. He says, they're afraid of you. You're a big Black guy. Hold up, we're in a business environment. We're not out on the street somewhere. Why would
Right.
that matter? And then I started kind of reading that, and I would see it on TV shows, and I realized that is a thing. That's a thing.
Mm-hmm.
And that's my environment. Now, some Black people would say, so you kowtow to the environment, right? You fetch and step it. Yeah. No, that's the environment that I'm in. And if you're going to survive in that environment, you got to make some adjustments. So I started making sure that my wife always says, you always like you're mad. And I said, no, this is the way God made my face, right? So I started making sure that I smiled. I started making sure that people realize that I bring value. Because if you bring value, nobody sees anything except it. They don't even see your color anymore.
And they tend to invite you in more, I would
That's
think
right.
as well. So those two things, being honest, being approachable are some key factors and key success factors as well.
Reggie, we
So,
have another question there
okay.
from Eric. Eric, if you want to go ahead and unmute and ask your very important question.
Uh-oh.
Okay. I have another question for you, Mr. Echols.
Yes, sir.
How do you handle situations when you run into black men with what we call the slavery mindset in the workplace?
Education. So I run into that all the time. I'll tell you.
For example, I've seen situations where me being a black man in a majority white environment, if there is another black individual like myself, there have been some cases where you run into that particular person that's kind of like that, you better be a good one, that master watching. It's kind of like some of those. How do you approach that situation?
So I had a situation where I was cool with everybody. Security guards, the maintenance guys, you name it, right? So, and I say that because guess what? Those where all the black people were, right? The IT guys, the security guys, the maintenance guys were black and Hispanic, right? So I had a good relationship with all these people. They could depend on me, I could depend on them. But at the same time, you're right. In some circumstances, they would say anything out of their mouth at any given time around anybody. And so for me, it was a matter of pulling them to the side and kind of educating them. I actually had a guy outside the building one time, and I'm talking to him, and he started talking real crazy, and I had to pull him to the side and say, "Hey, look, I didn't always have this suit on," just to let him know that, just to let him know that you've misconstrued me because I'm wearing this suit, right? And so the bottom line to that question is, man, you're going to get everything from everybody, and they're going to try you. And the more you adapt to the system and align yourself to move forward, the more you're going to get it. Another quick story. I had this young lady working for me. I hired her as my secretary. I hired her because she had a black name and went to a black university. I knew she was. She hadn't finished her degree, but she was about 34, right? Brought her in, Sharon. Sharon worked for me. Sharon's papers would be, she's my secretary, right? We're doing stuff going to the White House, and she's got misspelled words and all kind of, but I'm working with her, right? Then at one point, I'm always looking for opportunities for my people. So I'm going to send her to school. The government's paying for this, right? She didn't want that. And somebody pulled me aside and said, "Hey, Mike, everybody doesn't want everything that you want them to have." It's like, wow. And that's a problem with our people, right? So some of these people you're coming in contact with, you can't necessarily pull them with you. They don't necessarily want what you want them to have, right? And then it got even worse with Sharon. We had a boss who was a former admiral in the Coast Guard, and he happened to formerly have been the head of personnel. Sharon reported me that on Fridays, when we are allowed to dress down, I didn't want them dressing down. I wore a suit every day, right? Because I knew what environment I was in. So he brought her in there and he said, "Well, Sharon, did you ask Mr. Echols, could you?" She said, "No." He said, "Well, did he ever say anything?" I said, "Well, sir, I would never say anything about somebody's clothing." And so here's a situation where, and it was one of those things that went out the door. And it didn't make me look bad. He just shook his head like, "Oh my God." She just set back every black woman that looked like her in that office because she came in there with something that was really stupid, that was based on something in her head that had no follow through, right? And I guarantee you it had a negative effect on him, the way he saw the rest of the people within this office. especially the women that may go to lunch with her every day and hang out with her.
Yeah, and rather than come to you and ask you why you preferred not to dress, she never
That's the
asked
whole
you.
point.
Right. So let's go back to what you just said, because I too get joked about from time to time, because I wear a suit and tie every day, and even now working from home, my wife says, "Where are you going? You're walking down the hall. Why are you dressed like that?" I said, "Well, I'm gonna be on camera. I'm gonna be talking to people every day."
That's your
And
brand.
it's my brand. But I told a young group, I had a couple of kids that kept asking, "Mr. Reggie, what's the deal? You just like showing off." And I said, "Well, no, I don't like showing off." I said, let me put it this way. I said, "You know for a fact that as a Black person and a Black man, whenever I set foot in a room, they're going to judge me.
Absolutely.
Instantly, they're going to judge me." And I said, "So if I walk in the room and I'm dressed like I am, I'm going to start a little higher rather than lower in their minds of where they're going to place me." And I said, "My job is talking to senior level executives, C-suite executives about IT solutions and problems that I'm trying to get them to sign contracts that can be anywhere from $100,000 to $1 million." I said, I have to have respect immediately. And by dressing the way I do on a regular basis, it gives me that instant level of respect. Would you agree with that comment?
100% that they're putting you in a box. Every time somebody sees you or hears you, they're putting you in a box. It's what box do you want to be put in? And if you're trying to sell something, why would you want to work against yourself?
That's it. That's it. And I learned that, actually, I learned that from a Jewish man. I was in national account sales for a pharmaceutical company, and he had just got me promoted. He was my manager, and he says, "Look, I'm promoting you to this." He says, "You're going to be in headquarters more." He said, "So what I want you to do is, yeah, you got promoted to district manager, but you got to dress like you're the president, because that's where you want to be next.
You dress
for the role that you want to get to, not the role you're in."
Exactly. We have another question from Tonette. Tonette, if you can go ahead and unmute and ask your question. Looks like you turned off your camera.
She's trying to unmute there.
There you go.
Sorry about that. Hi, Michael. Hi, Red.
How you doing?
I just liked thoroughly this presentation, and it's interesting, Michael, when you said that you would see the big Black guy in the room. Just kind of from a woman appearing, I'm the only one woman that's on here tonight, I don't know. But in any event, I find that to be much like women who are also finding themselves in situations where they're trying to come across as they want people to respect what they're bringing to the table, as opposed to seeing their skin or their want. And so women are equally in that situation. But in addition to that, when we come across as assertive or obviously well versed in a different discipline or something, oftentimes it's perceived as the angry Black one. So there's a flip side of that too that I find is a condition when you're working in a predominantly white environment. So, that's a challenge equally for women. I did have a question, that was a comment, but my question to you is, what percentage of females are, as opposed to males, are in cybersecurity? And is there like a
Great question. So let me start by saying that, first of all, there's not enough women to begin with, but let me also say that Blacks make up, I think it's 13% of, is it 13% of the US population?
Yep.
And we are like 3% of the cybersecurity. And the question becomes why? And one of the answers that I have come to is access and exposure. Again, You can't be something that you didn't know existed. Also, typically people will, cybersecurity, if we go back to like 2008, 2009, it was information assurance, right? And most of the people in it had come out of the military, or they got their training because they were in telecommunications or something like that. What happens is it became sort of this closed, private, this is special. And then as it started to open up, when the jobs came, because they pay well, they always said, do you know somebody? Like I get emails all the time. They'll say, hey, do you know somebody that blah, blah, blah. Well, if all the people that they're asking, do you know somebody, they're hooking their friends up. So it just keeps multiplying, right? So and all the people that are sending in the applications, they're just going into the black hole, right? So that's probably part of the problem. One of the organizations that we started a few years ago and is doing really well now, the International IMC, I'll send it to you guys. International Association of Blacks. I'll send it to you guys for you to share. Okay. And part of that is helping people from kids on up to foster a career in cybersecurity. Now, they try to make cybersecurity this big, dumb, scary thing, right? In reality, there's lawyers, there's salespeople, there's, there are positions where you don't even have to be technical, right? And those people are making they're making a fortune right now, right? Mm-hmm. There's project managers, there's project coordinators, and that's the way you kind of work your way in. You just first need to get into the environment, right? And get a position that is attached to cybersecurity. And that's how you grow in it. But if you don't do that, it's hard to just jump in. Even if you go to school, you get all the degrees you're supposed to get, it's still not that easy.
Let's spend some time talking about this segment, because I know one of the times we were talking, we talked about the workforce shortage that we're facing. So we can talk a little bit about that. And then if you can get into your cyber secure zones program that you're working on, and talk about the breadth of income in this particular space. If you can do that for me, that'd be great.
Sure. So in working for someone, there will always be another cyber job once you get experience. It's the experience piece, right? So you get people with certifications, they got the degrees, but they can't get a job. It's because people are looking for the experience. So once you get into this thing, it's a pretty secure environment, right? And so just getting in is the key. Now, 1.2 million person shortage of cyber professionals is expected. Things like SolarWinds exacerbate that, because we clearly see that the government is getting closer and closer to putting requirements on people. There's requirements for financial sector already. There are requirements like HIPAA for the health sector, but they're going to start putting more requirements on other sectors, which means that all those companies and CEOs and people that tried to avoid cybersecurity, they will not be able to. So they're going to have to hire people. So the field is going to grow. So this 1.5 million person shortage of cyber professionals, that's where that comes from, is this expansion of this liability, regulatory, and all the other things that force people to spend that cyber money. So I'll give you an example of an opportunity that I'm taking advantage of right now. DOD they have 300,000 contractors. Some of those contractors cut grass. Some of those contractors paint. But many of those other contractors do services that means that they have to get some of that, not classified, but sensitive information. If you're someone or a company, in order to do business with DOD or to maintain contracts that you have, you're going to have to meet a certain certification level. They're doing tests on 9 companies right now. In the months after that, every DoD contractor is going to have to be at a level 1, that's the guys that cut the grass and paint and all that kind of stuff, or a level 3, which means that you have 130 controls in place for a level 3. That means that you need people that help people do those gap analysis. You need, on the other side, people to do assessments, and the assessments have to be done every 3 years. At the same time, within the federal government, they are going to make it, it comes little by little by little, every system, some agencies have 1,000 systems. Every system has to be certified every 3 years. And so you're seeing this thing is rolling. So then you're going to see that in state governments. And then you're going to see that in private companies who do a certain type of business. So you can see where this field is rapidly growing, right? And so whereas it looks like it's saturated, nowhere near. We're in its infancy. Infancy. The laws haven't caught up. There are no cyber laws, really, right? You know, like they say, for instance, the terrorists that broke into the Capitol, they say we have terrorism laws for foreigners, but we don't have laws for the, domestic terrorists. Well, it's the same thing with cybersecurity. We have electronic crime laws, right? But that's going to start to catch up, right? You're going to see people suing people over different things. The liability factors are going to change. So this digital world creates opportunity. I always say that if you've got somebody in 8th grade in the hood, right? You got a community of people in the hood that you can take they're in 8th grade, in 8 years, they could all be making more money than their parents ever made. And they would be taxpayers. Win-win situation. So why wouldn't anybody want that?
You know, it's interesting because I was talking with some students and talking about, what I call the birth and the growth within cybersecurity, because, CISOs, that's a fairly recent C-suite role that was created, because those people didn't have a seat at the table, the decision table. Now it's imperative to have a CISO. It's imperative to have somebody with that kind of knowledge at those tables, helping you make the right decisions as you build out your strategy. And not only the CISOs, but then the teams that help, run the assessments, that, do all the remediation work that comes out of the assessments and those types of things. So there's so many jobs that are becoming available. And I know I was talking with James, and I hope I'm gonna put you on the spot with this. James has got a stellar career in the project management space. I mean, he's commanded it from beginning to end. I mean, he learned it, he's teaching it. And so we were talking about career, and I said, find a way to start, as you said, shifting that and having your background read more about cyber. And I'm thinking his career, his income, and everything will take off. Would you elaborate or talk about that a little bit, maybe?
Let me change James' life tonight.
All right.
So when I give
Change my life.
speeches,
Help me out.
when I give speeches, the first thing that I say is cybersecurity is and this is in a room full of cybersecurity experts. I go, cybersecurity is a buzzword. It's the amalgamation of the training, the technology, the people, the processes. We call it cybersecurity. What it really is risk management.
That's it. Yeah.
You can learn risk management, which of course you can, and apply that to what you do, risk management, vulnerability times threats times consequences, right? And apply a couple of those risk management frameworks. One, for instance, for cyber is the CSF, cybersecurity framework created by NIST, National Institute of Standards and Technology. If you can take that thing and implement it into what you already have, you just took it to another level.
Okay, we actually have another question. Here's a question, it actually is for me. As far as the security clearances, top secret, secret, classified, the easiest way that I know that you can get one is join the military. As a person who's been involved in the government and different levels and with the Department of Defense, do you know of any other way? Because I'm sure a lot of people, because a security clearance actually can, having one and keeping one active can basically solidify your career. Do you know what is the easiest way to acquire one other than somebody sponsoring?
The other night I watched Judah and the Black Messiah. Y'all got me on here giving away all the ghetto engineering techniques. All right. Here's what we do here. Go to somewhere that has a requirement for security guards. Work there till you get your clearance.
You know what? You're right, because all they want is a pulse.
You can
and be able to clear the background check.
Part-time.
That's right.
Once you get that clearance, like what some people do here, they work at federal buildings or they work at security guard. Put in a few hours a week. It's an investment.
See, now for those of you who weren't aware of that, that was worth the price of admission of coming here today. How to get a security clearance.
There you go.
And don't go to the military. See, there you go.
Really interesting story right quick. So I was building networks in the late 90s for NEC. We built all the high-speed networks for AT&T, MCI, WorldCom, all that. And then I decided to start my own company. So I'm in company. I started this company in 98, 99, 2001, 9/11 hits. Everybody stock, WorldCom, it wasn't Verizon back then. It was Bell Atlantic. Their stock drops. Little companies like me, they didn't have any use for us. So I needed to have a job. What am I going to do next? What am I going to do next? What am I going to do next? TSA had just started. My first job at TSA was as a screener. Okay, so think about this. I'm a business guy, all the same people that I'm dealing with. All of a sudden, they're coming through the airport and there I am in my uniform screening people. When you talk about having to humble yourself, I was able to do that because I was trained to be able to humble myself. Within 6 months, I was at headquarters, and then I told you what happened when I did the great pilot at the Super Bowl.
Right.
So sometimes you have to take a couple steps back towards a goal, but you have to know how things work. I did that simply for the purpose of getting a clearance. It worked.
Okay, we actually have a question or comment from John. John, if you want to go ahead and unmute and ask you.
Okay, well, I actually see there's a question out there from James asking about Security Plus. And I kind of want to do a commercial for one of our partners. City College of Chicago is currently offering several free or low-cost technology boot camps, including a Security Plus certification. And for certain individuals, they can actually get free scholarships for the whole program, including the certification exam.
And that's online.
Currently it's all online, and Reggie's actually spoken to the classes because I was actually in the first class they offered, and Reggie came and spoke in front of our class. But they're also offering classes from the Google certification, Salesforce, and other things. And those are great things to get. And yes, the Security Plus is one of those certifications that's becoming more and more cherished as you search for positions.
Thank you, John. And by the way, John, since we are actually IT professionals, if you could please provide us the link in the chat.
I already did. If you take a look in the chat.
Okay, well, okay, if you could provide it again, please, we appreciate that. And Jack, go ahead and ask your question, please.
I'm sorry, this question is for John. So that is just for City of Chicago residents as well, right? Correct?
If you attend the class and want to get a full scholarship, yes, you have to be in the city of Chicago. If you are not expecting to get a scholarship for the class, you can sign up just like any city college class being outside the city limits.
So are there any that are available for outside the city limits?
National Able Network.
Oh,
There
yeah,
you
I'm
go.
aware of that.
Mhm.
Jack, by the way, the city colleges will educate anybody who just writes a check. That people don't turn down money.
I'm sure they will. I'm sure.
And
Thank
by
you.
the way, since it's actually a city college, it's probably going to be pretty low cost. Because
Yep.
we pay, those of us who live in the city of Chicago, we pay enough in taxes.
I understand.
For example, I'm taking what class am I taking now? AWS class, and it's $600 for the whole class.
So while we're talking about education, classes, certifications, Michael, can you talk about do they carry their weight today? The Security Plus and those types of certifications?
Yeah, the best thing you can do is experience, right? So if you can get somebody to even let you be an intern, people, when people get a certain age, they don't see themselves as that, right? But if you call up a company and say, man, I'd love to just be an intern. I'll give you 5 hours of work a week, 6 hours of work. That's experience, right? And then if you start to get the certifications became super important because the HR people don't know the difference. So all they're looking for is, do you have a certification? So if you had gotten somebody like Bill Gates back in the day, right, trying to get into a company, they would have turned him down because he did not have the paperwork. That's where the certifications become even more important.
Is there anyone more important than the other?
Well, the thing is, the CISSP, fascinating story. At one point, NIST has a program, National Institute of Standards has a program, National Initiative for Cyber Education. They did a heat map a couple of years ago, right? And they found that there were 300,000 jobs across the country that asked for CISSP. There had only been 79,000 CISSPs ever handed out, and some of those people were dead.
Wow.
And it was because they were sort of overkill, right? They just know, oh, get somebody with CISSP. And all they needed them to do was monitor a system, right? So we're learning. And that's why I said we're still in our infancy, we're learning. And so they're realizing now that you don't need to have that there is a progression. And sometimes you're better off bringing people in and training them up yourself. So you've got the A+, Security Plus, and then to get a CISSP, you've got to have 5 years of IT or security experience to go along with passing the certification.
So let's spend a few minutes talking about,
Excuse me, Reggie, before we do that,
yes.
Eric has another question.
Sure.
Go ahead, Eric.
Apologies for all the questions.
No, that's what this is about, Eric. I'm glad you got them.
Man, you make sure you connect with me on LinkedIn and reach out. We can have further conversations.
I will. I definitely will. I have a question for you, Mr. Echols. Do you have any tips for minority entrepreneurs actually trying to gain more entry into the risk management field? And secondly, this is a two-part question. I heard you mention solar winds earlier. Are there any more possibly overlooked requirements that you could shed some light on that we should know about if we are to enter into the risk management field?
So again, the risk management field is understanding, I said risk management is cybersecurity, right? So it's understanding the vulnerabilities, the threats, and the consequences. Now, if we take those 3 areas and under each of those, you put, okay, so how do you understand the vulnerabilities? Well, there's tools for that. There's frameworks for that. The threats. Well, there's things associated with threats. Like for instance, there's cyber threat indicator sharing. That's how people tell, one company tells another company the type of malware that's being sent, right? So under vulnerabilities, under threats, and under consequences, there are a set of practices, right? And if you start to learn those things, you move forward pretty quickly. Vulnerability, these assessments come in different flavors. So you can, just like in the old days, you do a security assessment, you go out, you walk around the building, you check the doors, you do that. Well, those same type of processes and frameworks exist in cybersecurity, right? And once you start to dig into them, it becomes you kind of see the big picture. It's very hard to see from the outside. So you reach out to me and we'll talk about it.
And I think, when you all were talking, Eric, I just jumped out of here and I Googled learning risk management. And I mean, I got so many hits. I mean, there's online classes, there's books, there's classes at different colleges. So I think, start slow, jump out there, find some things that you can read on your own. Because I agree with Michael, because, people don't realize that, security is about people first, right? Processes, and then you wrap technology around that. And so you've got, people have to understand that. And so as you're dealing with the people and the processes, that's where the risk and the vulnerabilities come in. And that tells you maybe what kind of technologies you have to add, as well as changing some of the processes, training some of the people better. So it backs into all those things back over again. But I think you can get a lot of that online in different books and courses, but definitely reach out, as Michael said, to him and connect. There is a ton of money in this career. And the other thing, and I meant to find this number earlier, I apologize. The C-suite is gearing up. There's a lot of organizations, corporations that have CISOs, but there's a lot that don't. So
that's what I meant by the pressure. They're going to start making, at least public companies have to have one.
Have to have a CISO. So the jobs and the opportunity in the next number of years are going to explode.
Excuse me,
Yes,
define what CISO is, because not everybody's like, what y'all talking about? But nobody's gonna say it, so I'm gonna say it. What y'all talking about? What's CISO?
Chief Information Security Officer, CISO. CISO, depends on who you talk to, but it's Chief Information Security Officer.
And let me explain the difference between IT and cybersecurity. IT people assure availability. When the CEO can't communicate, he's telling the IT guy, get it up and running. How many times have you heard that? Just get it up and running. He doesn't care how, just get it up and running. A cybersecurity guy is actually kind of gravity or pushback against the company, because the cyber guy is saying, oh, we can do that, but we have to put these controls in place. Or we can do that, but we have to do it this way. Oh, we can do that, but it has to pass this test, right? And so that's why a lot of companies try to avoid their cybersecurity responsibility, because there's a cost involved. It costs money, right? As opposed to just letting it fly.
Yeah, definitely. You really piqued my interest. I've worked on numerous amounts of DR plans with several different companies. And I've noticed that one thing that a lot of companies, no matter how big or small, when it comes to their DR plan, the security portions of their DR plan are so low that even if you were to recover your data, it's still compromised. It's compromised from the get-go, and if it was, let's say there was a breach, like you said, there are no rules. There is no safety net for cybersecurity, for breaches, so when working on those DR plans, you brought back a lot of memories with risk management. Definitely got to link with you, man.
So when you talk about those DR plans, you're talking about risk management. what you would be doing is saying, okay, what are the consequences to us not being able to bring that data back? What are the consequences to ransomware, us getting hit with the ransomware attack and we don't have our data backed up? What are we? And so there's actually money in being able to translate that, right? It's
Exactly,
not
yeah.
all people writing code or sitting and trying to track and detect malware and cyber malfeasance. And it's not all about that. It's a system, just like any other system. You know, if you go into the financial sector in a bank, you got tellers, you got financial people, you got accountants, you got a security guard at the door, right? You got investigators, it's the same with cybersecurity.
Mhm. Yeah. And so, Eric, you brought up a good point there when you talked about the discovery, right? Disaster recovery processes. But you talk about getting experience. What I try to direct people to is I direct them to nonprofits. Why? Because nonprofits need the help, and they're getting attacked just like a small business. And so if you want to start getting some experience, anybody on here that's already in technology, that's chasing those security certifications, and you want to gain some experience, go volunteer to be their CIO for them of a small nonprofit. Help them with their technology, give them ideas, help them build out their security plan, right? A strategy roadmap and a plan to follow it. You know, find out how to do an assessment. You know, again, a lot of this stuff is on the internet. You know, once the assessment is done, you're a technical guy, you can figure out the remediation, and maybe you don't have the skill set, but you got a buddy that has the skill set. So you bring him in for an hour or two to do this, bring another buddy in to do that. You've now built a security plan for a small nonprofit. You can take that out and put that on your resume.
And thank you, Reggie. I'm
Yeah,
going
I'm
to go into
sharing.
a segue with that.
Sure.
That's how I actually launched my IT career, because I have been studying and doing things, and I was actually on the board of a nonprofit, and I actually volunteered doing exactly what you're saying. I taught some classes to the individuals there at the agency I was on the board of, and it enabled me to have verifiable experience that launched me into LexisNexis as an IT person.
Yeah. See. So I want to stop for a minute. We have someone online here, and she's been awfully quiet. Lisa is from Matrix Resources, and she, I believe she's an agile ops dev matchmaker. Is that correct?
I'm in IT staffing, and Matrix also does agile and DevOps coaching.
Ah.
And
very
I'm
good.
placing a lot of people in security, shocker, the last. And anyone that's been in IT for a while, for the longest time, IT was seen as, you know, the cost center and not the solution provider. And the companies that didn't really embrace that, hello Sears, you know, were kind of left in the dust. And I feel like security, you know, companies are kind of realizing. I'm still shocked at the number of clients that have, you know, that don't have any PCI, and they've got people's credit cards information, and they don't have a security team, let alone a CISO. So, you know, SolarWinds, the more breaches we have, the more it's going to be mandated. It's not going to be a choice anymore.
Very good.
Hit me up on LinkedIn. I am happy to help. 2020 and 2021 is about not, you know, just matchmaking. How can I help you? Networking. So yeah, I'd love to help in any way.
Well, thank you for being part of the session tonight. Thank you for the offer to help. You know, this is a nonprofit organization, and you know, many like myself and John and others on here on the board, you know, we've given a lot of time away. It's one of the most challenging opportunities that you can do, because you know, you're in these roles for the organization, and they're non-paid, and you have a day job. So my hat is off to everyone that participates and that gives back to this organization. But the net of it, the output of it is amazing. I mean, I've got I've seen young men come through the BDPA program and they're working for the Deloittes and they're making, you know, 6-figure incomes where, I mean, like myself, I grew up in Inglewood in Chicago. I never imagined that I would be earning the kind of income that I have. And so again, we go back to it, you know, a person can't be what a person can't see. And just like Michael was able to sit on the other side of the fence and see some opportunities, because my sister was at the YMCA, and she worked at one that was in a very diverse neighborhood. She ended up having a couple of white friends, and I got to see on the other side of the fence. And people started sharing information with me that I had no idea these kinds of jobs existed. I mean, when I found out that I can be a medical sales rep and they would pay me the money they pay me, give me a car and expenses, it's amazing. So I do thank you for what you're doing. So
Yep.
everybody connect with Lisa.
Two things. I want to piggyback on what Michael said about, you know,
Sure.
smile on your face. It's amazing the difference that it makes. People, my daughter has resting bitch face, and I am constant, and people think she's really mean and stuck up, and it's not that. She's just a little introverted and shy, and I'm coaching her on the conscious, natural smile, not the call center smile. So it's so important. It's so important. And then also, one of my favorite books is Outliers.
Outliers?
Outliers, Malcolm Gladwell. And it's, you know, Bill Gates isn't Bill Gates because he's the smartest man in the world. Bill Gates is Bill Gates because of the opportunities and where he lived and who his mom worked for, just like you, Reggie. And it just really talks about, like, if you're born in January or you're born in August or you're born in November, you know, it's all the aligning of the stars. So it was really enlightening, and really kind of opened my eyes up a little bit.
Awesome.
That's it.
Awesome. So speaking of books, everyone, we are going to be, I'm going to ask Charity to send out a note to everyone. I think we all have all your emails. Everybody tonight, yeah, I think we can do it. Everybody that joined tonight will be getting an autograph book from Michael Echols. So you'll get an email. We'll ask for the address you want us to send the book to. I'm going to purchase some and send them out to Michael, and then we'll start to get them mailed out to everybody for joining tonight. And thank you so much for that. And Michael, thank you for your participation on that. So as we're winding down here, I just want to make sure that, you know, everybody got their questions asked. You know, what's that one question somebody's holding on to and they were scared to ask? And then we're going to go back to Michael and kind of have him give us like 2 or 3 closing kind of thoughts and comments as we're wrapping up. So out to the guests, are there any burning questions that just weren't asked? Go ahead, James.
This one is for Michael. What books would you recommend to help us get a better understanding or a foundational understanding of security, separate from the Security Plus study guide, training manuals, and all that stuff? And your book, of course.
You know, I wrote this book because I didn't find a book that did that, right? Because here's what I tell everybody. The big picture. If you understand the big picture, it's easier to close it down. So for instance, if we're talking about cybersecurity and you don't understand why NATO has not defined cyber war, then you can't really understand cybersecurity, right? Because there's a political, technical, operational, societal piece to it. So I wrote this book, I'm being straightforward, because I could not find a book that wasn't like a technical book or a political book. There was nothing that showed you how everything is connected. And then you probably can't see that. It's called Cyber in the Age of Trump, The Unraveling of America's National Security Policy. By reading this, you'll understand how things were structured, what they're trying to do, how that connects to what's going on across the country, and how it all plays out. Because everything goes counter to, a lot of things go counter to logic, right?
Okay.
So for instance, and I know I'm a long answer to your question, but for instance, why aren't there rules and regulations and laws about cyber? Well, one of the reasons is that a lot of companies on the internet use the same techniques that hackers use. So if you put different rules and laws in place, you're going to affect Apple's money, you're going to affect Microsoft money, you're going to affect, and they're the people that put people in office. So this is a very complex digital society that we live in, right? And so when you can understand the big picture, it makes it a lot easier to figure out how to take advantage of some of these opportunities.
Okay. And that was called Cyber in the Age of Trump. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's by Charlie Mitchell.
Okay. Thank you.
So Michael,
Okay.
what's next for you professionally?
I have a question.
So I have a company, Max Cybersecurity, for-profit company, and I have a nonprofit organization at Kennedy Space Center. And at Kennedy Space Center, we help to build cyber threat information sharing organizations. For instance, we have one information sharing analysis organization that has 15 ports in it. They all share cyber threat information with each other to help protect each other. And my for-profit business, Max Cybersecurity, we're going to be taking advantage of those 300,000 DoD contractors that need to be assessed, right? And I'm also developing, I developed the requirements for the cyber requirements for autonomous vehicles for Jacksonville Transit. They're building a lane down in Jacksonville, Florida. And now I'm on the other side working with the construction companies that make sure that cybersecurity is built in from the beginning of the project. And then we're also building maturity models for transportation operational technology. Doesn't exist. Doesn't exist. So a lot of transit agencies across the country, even though they're becoming fully digital, they don't have those risk management practices in place. They don't do the assessments like they're supposed to. They don't have visibility across their networks, all of those types of things. So I stay buried in trying to carve out a leadership role.
All right, Eric, I'm gonna get to your question here, but I want you to talk a little bit, Michael, about the Cyber Secure Zones project program.
Right. So as part of kind of my advocacy and the relationships that I have still with people in the government, I'm trying to build a model to take all of these government programs. They have some great programs. They come up with great risk assessment models. They do stuff at every agency. Guess what? They fall on deaf ears. They never reach the people that they're supposed to reach, right? So in the local community, people are no more resilient than they should be. And they use your tax money to develop these products and programs and risk assessments and training. But they're developing all these things every day. So I'm trying to create this ecosystem at the local level. Like, let's say in a local community in the Chicago area, where it's in a low income neighborhood, which makes people come into that community, right? You've already started this ecosystem going. And now all of those programs that never reached the kids that the program was designed to reach, now there's a place for the federal government to focus those resources. Additionally, all of the entrepreneurs in that area who may be doing risk assessment, cyber, they now have a hub to connect into. And then from that, the people who need experience, which is the reason people can't get jobs, can now work at nonprofits and work with senior citizens and go out to high schools and middle schools and teach them so that they can get their security plus before they get out of high school. That ecosystem is how you make a community more cybersecurity and more cybersecure and more resilient. And it's easy to do because all the resources already exist. Nobody has taken the leadership role of bringing it together.
Excellent, thank you. Eric, you had a question, sir?
Yeah, I do. It's for Mr. Echols again. I was reading one of your articles on SIM swapping. I believe you wrote it last year, right?
Wow. Okay.
Um, with the question on risk, you know, I'm very inquisitive. I'm nosy. I told y'all.
I like that about you. I really do, Eric.
I was just going over that and listening to the conversation we're having today. How do you feel about biometrics and retinal scanning on cell phones in relation to cybersecurity now?
That's the book, man. That's what I'm saying is that all these things are occurring to us every day. Retinal scans, DNA, 23andMe. Well, people are trying to find out what their heritage is, right? People are doing these things for good reason. Well, guess what? The Chinese has collected all of our information from all of these hacks. They've got supercomputers. And now in the future, they may be able to buy a copy of your DNA to go with that. Wow. Wow. And I use the Chinese, it could be the Russians, it could be the Iranians, it could be anybody that's looking to do us harm.
And it would probably take a while before we could actually catch up with that, seeing as though it's a digital crime. And one of your other articles you wrote about, you were saying, it just skipped my mind, but crap, I was just running through it.
Let me ask you a question. When they had the Target hack, or when they had the Hilton hack, or the Marriott hack, or when OPM was hit, when 21 million records of federal officials and their families were stolen, who's the victim?
It's usually minorities first.
Right, it's all the people. And here's the point though, when you hear about Home Depot getting hacked, right, and all the records are stolen, Home Depot goes about its business. It's all the people whose stuff was stolen, but they don't treat you like a victim.
You just get
And all
offered a
that
temporary
information can be
security.
used against you in the future. And people go, well, what do you mean used against you, Mike? You're really blowing this out. No, I'm not. Because to show you how they're trying to take and correlate this information, last year in New York, they wanted to use your social media information to determine what your insurance rates should be. A year and a half ago, Facebook was trying to connect with like Bank of America so that they could start sharing information. So there's a lot going on behind the scene that people are just not aware of, and it will hurt you. It will hurt you.
So we got just a little bit more time left, and James, you had a question?
Yeah, I've got a good question. You kind of just touched on this, so I want to
go ahead.
There. This one's for Mr. Echols. Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, so on and so forth. These platforms, specifically in regards to, and I'm just going to use the case of Amber Geiger and Botham Jean. After she shot Botham Jean, Black Twitter or whomever was able to do a deep forensic analysis of her background to find all the tweets and text messages that were disparaging remarks against Martin Luther King or African Americans or all that kind of stuff. And what we're seeing now, especially with Kyle Rittenhouse and the Milwaukee shooting, that a lot of these individuals that partake in domestic terrorism or all this weird, crazy stuff, they have a social media background that paints to that narrative. So they commit a crime, and then you have a digital history, a digital record of all that stuff. From your perspective, because a lot of this airspace is new, and I'm seeing people doing dance moves and all this stuff on TikTok and blah blah blah, and the new silhouette challenge and all this, that, and the other. From your perspective, given what you know, the correlation between what we're doing for fun or self-expression and then how it's being used or weaponized against us, either when we do dumb stuff or if it's stolen and then turned around and used against us. How do you see the proliferation of that going forward, moving in the future, and specifically with the Black community?
So we're okay. The kids are in trouble. And part of the reason that the kids are in trouble, because you mentioned TikTok. Well, in most of the federal government now, you can't use TikTok. You can't have it on any devices because TikTok is an agent of the Chinese government.
Yep.
So all that information is being collected and correlated. It may not even be collected and correlated at this moment, collected and correlated for these supercomputers that are getting faster and faster and faster, and will one day be able to figure out where you are at any given time. Oh, by the way, they already can do that because they have your GPS on your cell phone, right? And so the combination of all these things, then you add in a disaster like a pandemic. With the pandemic, they now have where you can track on your phone if you're near someone who had COVID, right? Well, what a great thing, right? That helps us get rid of the pandemic. But here's the problem. Whenever we get new technologies and we have allowances, we don't go backwards, right? We don't go back. They're not going to go back and erase those things, right? So now they'll be able to tell who was near somebody that had COVID. They'll be able to now take biological, mix that with the technical, and in the future, someone will say, we're going to charge you more for your insurance because you have potentially have issues associated for when you had COVID 4 years ago. Now, let's talk about all the people and all the things you're talking about with the supercomputers and now with all the great storage that we can do. They literally will be able to go back and 15 years, 20 years ago and see every message that you ever did. And I'm talking about a search in 5 minutes over 20 years. Now, how does that affect me? Well, what happens when you can't get a clearance because of that? What happens when potentially more and more and more jobs demand some type of background check and clearance? So now that's affecting your family. Now that's affecting generations of people. Now that's so all of these things have implications, right? And that's why privacy advocates work so hard to try to stop some of this proliferation. Not that they don't like technology, but it's just that it's out of control and it's not going to be used for you. It's going to be used against you at some point. My last point is that even when you don't have a Facebook account, Facebook makes a profile of you. You're in pictures at a wedding, you're in pictures of somebody else, they know names. So their computers make a profile of you, even if you don't have a Facebook account. Deep, right?
It is very deep, and I can echo what you're talking about. I got a call from somebody saying I have a job, and I know you can pass the background check, the credit check, and the P-test. And then I got the job just because of that. But we do actually have a question here from Charles. Charles, if you can make it quick, because we're going to wrap it all up, and I'm going to toss it back to, after your question, we'll toss it back to Reggie we'll start our closeout.
Definitely. So to jump right into it, yeah, we're all scared, right? You know, we have to protect our identity and our personal information, but at the same time, how do we leverage the convenience and advances in technology along with that?
Great question. Well, the first thing you do for protection is awareness. Just being aware that your Fitbit is taking all your coordinates, your schedules, right? Your heart rates, all that. If it's going into any digital device, somebody's getting a hold of it, right? Then being aware that there have been a couple of crimes solved in the last couple of years where someone, they were able to use Alexa to determine that this guy had killed his wife, right? But in that case, that works out. We're happy for that. But the idea that now we've got these devices that are always listening to us. Then you hear that ADP, I think it was ADP or some security company, where the security guard for the last 5 years had been spying because he hacked into the systems. Well, actually, he had the code, right? So understanding this world that we live in is number one, right? But then understanding the solutions. You can freeze your credit, right? There are things that you can do that are pretty straightforward that lower your risk. It's just about risk reduction. And then how do you use technology? Well, I call it ghetto engineering again. You can be a small business and project yourself as a Fortune 500 company. You can put up a website, you can have class A everything. You can get services from Upwork and from Fiverr. You can have top project managers. You can have top field people. You can have salespeople who you met online who are doing one specific job. That's it. No risk, no, right? And you can create a Fortune 500 company from your living room. And,
So
and
with
my
that,
thing that I tell everybody,
mhm.
you want to make money, because bottom line is some people want to be famous, some people want to make money. I think as we get older, we all want to make money, right? Solve a problem. Don't chase, if you chase the money, if you're trying to get rich, you will never get rich. But if you solve a problem, people will come to you.
Mhm. All right, Daryl, I'm gonna let you ask this question. You gotta be quick though. Unmute, ask the question because we're gonna close out here. You've been quiet all night, so.
Actually, I just got in. But my
Yep.
question is, Michael, Mr. Echols, as you talking about cybersecurity, I was trying to tell people about using that in virtual reality and other areas, and I think you touched on that. But also, as you said too, just alluded to, coming in as an entrepreneur, a small businessman, how can you tap those areas? Because you think about big companies, looking at big companies, but is it realistic of doing that and also incorporating a minority neighborhood and also training to actually perpetuate that? That's my question.
Absolutely. And it goes back to my solve a problem. Okay, if you look at Comcast, Verizon, all the RCN, all the rest of them, they're always in need of contractors. Also, Amazon, if you didn't know, have a program now, for instance, where you can buy into the, almost like getting a franchise, and you have a truck that says Amazon, but you're your own private business. They finance you, the whole deal. And you've got, and if you had it in the last year, when they were booming, you'd have made out like a fat cat. So it's just having that awareness of what problem people are trying to solve, right? When those businesses are trying to expand to do whatever they're trying to do, man, they'll take whoever they need to take. That's your opportunity to get in.
Thank you.
Yeah. So unfortunately, with such a great conversation, we've got to bring it to the end. You know, I always myself walk away with aha moments from most conversations. I don't know if people saw me. I mean, I got a whole notepad of aha moments tonight from Michael, and I thank you for that. We've been honored with the conversation. He's asked to link into him, and that's very gracious of him to do that. I think we've all got a lot of work to do. Number one, going back to what Eric said, he'd like to see more people that look like him in technology. You've got to start sharing the value of being in technology and being in the cyberspace, right? And we've got to talk to kids that are young. I mean, the drug dealers are going out talking to 10-year-olds and 9-year-olds. We have to do the same thing. And Lisa, we're going to bring them and you're going to place them. And we appreciate your help in doing that. And so I'd like Michael to close out with any last comment that he has that he'd like to share with all of us tonight. And Michael, I've been honored to sit here across from you tonight and talk with you. So thank you very much for that.
First of all, I have to tell you seriously, the last few years for me have been a whirlwind. I'm honored that I work hard for me, right? And I work hard to help other people, but I'm honored that people would want to hear what I have to say, right? So I try to maintain that humbleness because it does make a difference. And the second thing I would tell you is solve a problem. I mean, you'd be surprised. Solve a problem and great things will happen. And then the last thing is they always try to convince us that there's something that you don't have. I'm telling you right now, you are enough. You got everything you need right now. You just got to refine it, shape it, shine it. And then also align to the money. if it turns out that, man, why can't I make this? Oh, because you didn't have that little align to them, get on the track.
Mhm. And I'm gonna say one thing in aligning to the money. You've got to build a network of champions, people that can lift you up into the careers you want to go into. You've got to have mentors, and you have to have people that you can lean in on and ask questions. And again, a gentleman told me years ago, as you're building your network, when you're first building your network, you need a bigger network above you. But as you start to climb, your network has to shift. You have your peer network that you have to have because you need those peers. You also still have a network above you because you need that to help still lift you up and get information and mentors. But the main thing is you got to reach down and grab some hands and pull them up at the same time. So I think as you're working on your professional careers, you're working on those things that are going to matter in the community, and they're going to matter in the future to our communities as well. So again, I thank everybody for spending time with us tonight. You could have been doing something else. Thank you so much for joining us. And John, thank you for asking me to host tonight. And Michael, thank you for considering to sit in and sharing your knowledge. We thoroughly enjoyed you. And I'll be in touch about how we distribute the books and everything, sir.
Reggie,
Thank
let me just
you.
say one
Appreciate
last
you
thing.
guys.
Sure. Who said that? Oh,
That's John Coleman, your president here at Chicago
yeah.
Chapter.
Sorry.
I'm so glad to have you all. If you did enjoy, please take a look at our YouTube channel to see previous presentations, as well as this presentation should be up in a few days. Also, we only go forth because we're a volunteer organization. We need your memberships. We need you to recruit your friends, family, and every other person you meet. And it's the investment in yourself is the cheapest investment you can ever make.
And we need sponsorship. So people, if you know people, organizations, or personal people who would like to donate to BDPA, this organization operates off those donations and those sponsorships. So anybody that's in a position to, or knows somebody in a position to, please reach out to John, and he can handle all that for you, because that's important for our growth and their success. So thank you very much.
We also have many open roles still unfilled. So if you want to be part of this organization, because that's how we move it forward, please reach out to me as well.
All right.
And as the technical director and our host MCs for the day, I just want to let you know, as John and Reggie both were saying, sponsorships are great. If you don't know anybody who can actually sponsor with dollars, don't forget, you can sponsor with your hands as BDPA and your mind. So connect and help us, because remember, teach one, reach one. Okay. I want to thank everyone who joined us for our Black History Month and cybersecurity. Everyone have a good BDPA day.
Good night, everyone.
Night, future technologist and current technologist.
It's been a pleasure, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Stay warm.